Hot take. Pokemon doesn't need voice acting. It needs better writing. A lot of people have been talking about the Pokemon franchise lately. Pokemon Legends ZA just released a few months ago, and while it has its high points, it's also sparked a common thread among Pokemon fans, a lack of voice acting. This also isn't specific to Legends ZA, it's just a common complaint for most modern Pokemon games like Scarlet and Violet, Sword and Shield. Some fans often claim that the lack of voice acting leaves cutscenes flat and lifeless, and I don't disagree. A common reference is this ridiculous scene from Sword and Shield, where the gym leader Piers performs a voiceless concert to an audience that seems to be booing him. Now my question is, would voice acting have improved this? Maybe, but keep in mind that this scene doesn't even have text boxes to give the illusion that words are being spoken. The recent Pokemon games have felt utterly flat and boring, not because of the lack of voice acting, but because the story and dialogue is utterly flat and boring. You're telling me that just because this scene had a voice in it, that it would somehow make it better? I'm not particularly inclined to agree. Voice acting is great, but it's not gonna save the Pokemon series. Some of my favorite games of the last few years have had great writing, and the lack of voice acting didn't stop them from making great games. Citizen Sleeper 2 is one of my favorite games of 2025. The writing is absolutely incredible, and it immediately immerses me in its sci-fi world. I can read it at my own pace, and even though there are long sections of the game where all I'm doing is reading, I never find myself bored or taken out of the game. I'm all in on this story, and I'm more than happy to spend my time reading as long as it's this good. Then in 2024, my game of the year was Arco. This game makes great use of its text boxes and formatting, to the point that I'm not even sure how a voice actor would vocalize certain lines. Like, how do you vocalize an emoticon? This emoticon adds a ton of personality and character, but it also adds some dark humor to the scene. It gives the game a more unique personality that you might not have expected, or maybe not even find anywhere else. Neither of these games had the massive budget of a Pokemon game, so maybe they couldn't have afforded voice acting anyway. But that didn't stop the developers from making incredible games. Pokemon and Game Freak, on the other hand, have all the money in the world, but don't seem completely sure what to do with it. If they were able to make a well-written, compelling, immersive Pokemon game, voice acting would be a great next step, but I don't think it would be good before then. Something I've been wondering lately is, did the Pokemon games ever actually want to reach this point? The jump to 3D has been anything but smooth, and it almost feels like something that is expected of modern games rather than something that Game Freak actually wanted to do with the series. We already had games like Pokemon Colosseum and XD Gale of Darkness on the GameCube. The idea of a 3D Pokemon game wasn't completely unexpected, but the mainline games still didn't transition to 3D for several generations after that. Personally, I do think that the mainline Pokemon games never should have gone 3D. Maybe they should have evolved into something like the HD 2D craze that's sweeping Square Enix JRPGs recently. I mean, I'm probably not alone in that I vastly prefer the animated 2D sprites from Black and White 2 over the modern 3D sprites. Plus, I mean, it's Nintendo after all. They're sort of known for being reluctant to give their main characters voices. To this day, outside of the Super Mario movie, I would say that Mario and Link are only really known for a few voice lines or sound effects. They never really actually have fully voiced lines within their games. Does this make Super Mario Odyssey a bad game? Or Super Mario Galaxy? Or 64? Does this take away from the quality of games like Ocarina of Time or Breath of the Wild? I'd argue no, it doesn't, because it's never really been about voice acting. Look, voice acting can be great. There's some incredible performances over the years that have added so much to the character, thinking of like Ben Starr, Jennifer English, Neil Newbon, Maggie Robertson, Christopher Judge, just to name a few. But those performances wouldn't be nearly as compelling if they were reading lines like this. There are many things wrong with the Pokemon franchise. The animations are pretty lacking, the challenges are barely there for anyone who's played one of these games before, and the formula overall is getting a little tired. And that's kinda just the tip of the iceberg. Slapping a voice acting band-aid on top would not solve all these problems, it might only exacerbate them. For longtime Pokemon fans, please tell me if one of the first things you do when replaying a Pokemon game isn't going into the settings and automatically setting the text speed to the fastest possible setting. It might be an understatement to say that the dialogue in these games leaves a lot to be desired, to the point where you could probably figure things out even if you couldn't read. And I know that one of my friends did that because they played Pokemon Blue before they could read. Honestly, if these lines had voice acting, it might only drag out the time that I have to sit there listening, or I would just skip through them adding a jarring cutoff to the voice lines that this might make the experience even worse. But I agree that not every line has to be voiced. It can be limited to certain cutscenes. Sure, I still don't think it's going to make those cutscenes more memorable. And to be clear, this has nothing to do with the quality of the voice acting. There's lots of great voice actors out there. I'm sure they could give a memorable performance. I just don't think that that's possible with the quality of the lines given. This year, 2026, is the 30th anniversary of the Pokemon games. The original Red and Blue were released on February 27th, 1996, which means that it's not only is this year the 30th anniversary, but this month is the 30th anniversary. February 27th is an annual tradition in the Pokemon world where the company presents the updates to all their various titles and usually announces new games. I think there is a strong possibility that the next mainline games, the 10th generation of Pokemon games, are going to be announced at the end of this month. And I wouldn't be surprised if they launched in the fall. That is typically the time of year that these games like to target. But do I have high expectations for the 10th generation of games? No, I've been playing these games way too long for that. But I do think that this is a monumental turning point for the franchise. The time between games has been growing over the last few years. Could that mean that Game Freak's putting more effort into these titles? Maybe. It could also mean they're just putting more effort into Beast of Reincarnation. Nothing against that game. I would also argue that the last few years have seen some of the best alternative creature collecting titles. Pal World, of course, is one of the obvious ones. It even rivaled some of the sales numbers of the best-selling Pokemon games. But there are some of my personal favorites as well. I think of Cassette Beasts from 2023. It introduces a fascinating way that the different types of creatures interact. A water type that gets hit with an ice type attack will actually freeze and become an ice type. And then in the same battle, if that now ice type is hit with a fire type attack, they'll melt back into a water type. And this is just kind of the bare bones. There's a lot more interesting things like glass types can be smashed, and then they have shards that can then damage physical attacks. So it's a lot more complex than the usual super effective versus not super effective. This one is still in early access, but Moirai Games' Aethermancer takes a roguelike spin on creature collecting that I've had a lot of fun with. Plus, the pixel art sprites are absolutely incredible. I could watch this all day. I'm also looking forward to giving Lumentale Memories of Trey a try, even though I'm not the biggest fan of that title, but that game is having its first public demo during Steam Next Fest this coming week. Finally, there's also Beastie Ball. This is also in early access, but it was my second favorite game of 2024 after Arco. The tactical battles are complex and kind of challenging, but I also love the way that they handle the wild beasties. Rather than just throwing a ball and hoping it works, you actually have to research the beasties. You'll need to play against the species several times before you learn how to add one to your team. And it's not just about how do you capture them, it's about how do you impress them. How do you get them to want to join you? And each species has its own requirement that needs to be met. For example, there's one that you need to score a no-hit point. That is, the ball hits the ground and you score a point. No one is returning the ball. It's not hitting another player. But there are other ones that are maybe a little more complex before the species will decide that it does want to join your team. It's that it's been impressed by you. I could go on, but my point is there's tons of other developers out there that are doing innovative things and changing the formula. And while Pokemon may be on top for now, how long can that last? How long can they keep putting out games that people aren't impressed by? This anniversary is a great opportunity for Game Freak to show that it is considering fans and improving the quality of these games. Game Freak could celebrate Pokemon's 30th anniversary with something exciting and different, but given how the business model of Pokemon kind of works, the games are a small piece of the pie. They really are just an excuse to create more Pokemon that then can be turned into merch, plushes, trading cards, and adapted into the anime. So I think chances are slim unless something changes. Like, people are going to have to stop buying Pokemon games before something changes. My guess is this 10th generation is just going to be nothing more than a better looking Scarlet and Violet. Maybe set in Australia. Calling that out now just for fun. But my main point is this. I don't want to hear someone say this line out loud. I want the line to be better. I want Pokemon games to be better. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, make sure to hit that like button. It really goes a long way. And subscribe so you can see anytime I put out more videos. I'll probably do more Pokemon stuff soon because the big, Pokemon Presents is happening. You can also check out my website, finallygotaround2.com. I also have a Substack. You can subscribe to get written content sent to your inbox. Oh yeah, I gotta show off my shirt. Shout out the agency. Thanks for watching.